I had gone to work for Vince as a widowmaker, and then my dad and my brother got into their legal trouble. So, I just told Vince it'd be better if I stayed at home right now.
He makes me sick. Those words sound like something a wrestler would say about 10 sworn enemies, a united group who worked together to end his career. But Barry Windham was too gifted and too respected inside the ring for a story like that to be true. Fans love a good villain story, and wrestling channels online love handing them one, even when the facts do not support it, because outrage and betrayal simply pull in more clicks than a calm, honest history lesson ever could. So here is the truth, right away, before this goes any further. Barry Windham never released a real list of 10 wrestlers who tried to have him banned. No archive interview shows him naming 10 people acting together in one plot. While we look at how a wrestler this gifted kept losing ground anyway, use the hype feature and give this video some hype, so more fans can see the real story behind the myth. What actually exists is a pile of separate interviews from very different years, sometimes decades apart, cut apart and stitched back together with dramatic music, tense narration, and a scary title designed to get clicks instead of tell the truth. It is an old trick, and it works because most viewers never go back to check the original footage for themselves. That real story is not a conspiracy. It is something sadder and far more human than a locker room plot, built from injuries, family emergencies, exhausting travel, and cold business decisions, rather than any group of jealous rivals working together in secret. If 10 wrestlers did not ban Barry Windham, why did so many of his biggest runs end early? Why did he keep disappearing, getting repackaged, losing momentum, or getting buried behind stronger political forces, just as things looked ready to grow? The answer is not one villain, and it is not a hidden group either. It is 10 separate people and moments, each one a real part of his story, counted down from the biggest name all the way to the very first spark of his career. This is not a list of enemies who banned him. It is the real cast of characters standing behind a career that never fully matched the size of his talent. A cast that includes teammates, family members, executives, rivals inside storylines, and even a few genuine friends who tried to help him along the way, right to the very end. Number 10 is Mike Rotunda, his own tag team partner and brother-in-law, not a rival at all. Together they were the US Express, and their run started fast. They beat the established veteran team of Dick Murdoch and Adrian Adonis to win the WWF Tag Team Championship. They lost the titles to Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik at the very first WrestleMania, then fought back and won the belts again 6 months later, only to eventually lose them to the dream team of Brutus Beefcake and Greg Valentine. On paper, that reads like a normal wrestling rise and fall, the kind every tag team goes through at some point in a long career. In reality, the bigger enemy the whole time was never Rotunda, never a rival team, and never a hidden rival waiting in the wings. It was the calendar itself. As Vince McMahon pushed the WWF into a fully national company, the US Express faced a brutal, relentless schedule of towns, arenas, and long overnight drives between shows. At one stretch, the team reportedly spent 96 straight days on the road without a real break to rest their bodies or see their families, traveling from one arena to the next with barely any time to recover between shows. That kind of pace wears down anyone, no matter how talented they are, and it eventually takes a toll that no amount of championship gold can fully make up for. Windham was not pushed out by Rotunda, and he was not forced out by any jealous rival plotting against him backstage. He left the promotion on his own terms, worn down by genuine physical and mental exhaustion rather than betrayal. His first major WWF run was not destroyed by enemies working against him in secret. It was slowly worn down by the machine surrounding him, a pattern that would repeat itself again and again through the rest of his long career, in one form or another, no matter which promotion he called home at the time. Number 9 belongs to his own family, his father Blackjack Mulligan and his brother Kendall Windham. In June of 1989, Barry returned to the WWF with a brand new cowboy villain character called the Widowmaker. It was a fairly simple creative idea, but his sheer natural talent kept him undefeated on television for 4 straight months, proof that his ability alone could carry even a basic gimmick further than most performers could ever manage, with a much stronger concept behind them. Then, in October of that same year, the run stopped just as suddenly as it had started. This was not backstage politics, and it was not a group of rivals working against him behind closed doors. His father and brother had become tangled in a serious federal counterfeiting case, and Barry made the decision to step away from national television to support his family through that difficult legal crisis, and the prosecution that followed. choosing loyalty to his own blood over the momentum of his television character. Once again, a promising run ended, not because rivals turned on him inside the business, but because real life outside the ring pulled him somewhere else entirely, toward the people who needed him most during their hardest moment. Number 8 is Vince McMahon himself, though not in the dramatic way clickbait titles usually try to suggest. In 1996, Windham returned to the WWF one more time and was handed a strange new character called the Stalker, a camouflage-wearing survivalist meant to somehow work as a quirky fan favorite. The concept never matched his identity as a serious, skilled athlete, and it simply did not connect with the crowd watching at home or in the arena night after night. Windham later explained that McMahon preferred inventing brand new characters instead of leaning on the built-in credibility of proven territorial stars like himself. Because the WWF ran on a pay-per-appearance system at the time, when the Stalker gimmick failed to sell tickets or merchandise, McMahon quietly stopped booking Windham on the shows entirely. This tactic is sometimes described as starving out a contract, leaving a wrestler stuck under an agreement with almost no income until the deal finally expired on its own. It was not a locker room full of jealous rivals turning their backs on him in a group. It was a cold business decision made from the very top of the company, proof that even a familiar, respected name could be sidelined the moment he stopped being useful to the office upstairs, regardless of everything he had already accomplished across a long and decorated career. Number 7 is The Clique, the tightly knit backstage group made up of Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Sean Waltman, a group whose friendship off-camera slowly became one of the most talked-about power structures in the entire industry. During the middle of the 1990s, this small circle of active, powerful performers gained real, lasting influence over how Vince McMahon booked his weekly shows. Windham was fairly open about disliking how this concentration of backstage power changed the wrestling business, shifting decisions away from pure in-ring merit and toward personal friendships and alliances instead. He never claimed the Clique personally tried to have him banned from wrestling, and the available research simply does not support that stronger claim either, no matter how tempting it might be for a clickbait title to suggest otherwise. What it does show clearly is an entire business transforming underneath him while he was still trying to work within it. Windham came from an older system where ring experience and in-ring performance carried the most weight in deciding who got pushed. Now he was suddenly working inside a newer era where a tight circle of active young stars could shape bookings and protect their own positions, whether or not that approach actually helped a respected, experienced veteran like him find his footing again. Number 6 is Vince Russo, the writer behind one of the clearest examples of real creative sabotage anywhere in Windham's career, even though it was never truly aimed directly at him as a person, but rather at a rival booker working in the very same creative meetings. In 1998, Windham took part in the WWF's NWA Invasion angle, coordinated by veteran booker Jim Cornette, and featuring Windham alongside Jeff Jarrett and the returning Rock and Roll Express. Russo approved the entire storyline, presenting it publicly as a genuine chance to spotlight Cornette's more traditional wrestling style for a new audience. According to later creative accounts from people involved, Russo actually structured the angle to fail right from the very start, quietly setting the whole storyline up to disappoint audiences no matter how hard the wrestlers themselves tried to make it work. The plan let him prove that the older NWA name and its respected veteran wrestlers could no longer connect with modern crowds during the fast, chaotic Attitude Era, which in turn weakened Cornette's standing inside the WWF creative team going forward. Windham lost momentum simply by being closely attached to that entire storyline. He was not personally targeted by name at any point in the process. He was one of the pieces damaged by a much bigger executive power struggle that had almost nothing to do with his own considerable ability in the ring, and everything to do with two writers fighting over creative control behind the curtain. Number 5 covers a group of moments that clickbait channels absolutely love to twist into supposed proof of real hatred, built almost entirely from ordinary wrestling ribs and scripted planned violence rather than genuine backstage conflict between real people who actually respected one another away from the cameras. A rib is simply a backstage practical joke, sometimes even written directly into a performer's on-screen name for a laugh. Mike Jones became Virgil as a playful jab at Booker Dusty Rhodes, whose real legal name was actually Virgil Runnels. The Harris brothers were named Creative Control, a cheeky nod aimed at longtime executives Gerald Briscoe and Pat Patterson. Tracy Smothers became Freddie Joe Floyd as an inside joke aimed at older promotion insiders from years earlier. None of these playful renamings were ever intended as attacks meant to ruin someone's career, and most of the wrestlers involved actually laughed about them for years afterward in later interviews. On top of that sits Windham's early feud with Kevin Sullivan's Army of Darkness stable in Championship Wrestling from Florida, a bloody and highly theatrical rivalry that drew massive crowds through through pure, effective storytelling rather than any genuine hostility between the two men. Then there is the infamous 1991 Halloween Havoc angle, where Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko slammed a heavy steel car door directly on Windham's hand in front of a live audience. It looked genuinely brutal on camera, but it was actually a carefully planned stunt used to write him off television because of a real, legitimate knee injury happening behind the scenes at the exact same time. Zbyszko later adopted the nickname the Cruncher and went on to beat Windham for the NWA Western States Heritage Championship as part of the planned booking, not some hidden real-world betrayal orchestrated in secret. Dramatic footage taken completely out of its original context can easily look like a real attack on camera, when in truth it was simply wrestling, doing exactly what wrestling has always done for its audience, turning fake violence into genuine entertainment. Number 4 is Master P and the entire No Limit Soldiers storyline, the direct trigger behind the single biggest political moment of Windham's entire late career. In 1999, WCW signed rap star Master P to a costly, headline-grabbing deal and pushed his No Limit Soldiers stable as top-level babyfaces on national television. To oppose them, the company created the West Texas Rednecks, a country-themed group featuring Curt Hennig, Bobby Duncombe Jr., Barry Windham, and his own brother Kendall standing right beside him. The group even recorded a genuine country song called Rap is Crap, written for them by Jimmy Hart and Howard Helm specifically for this storyline, complete with its own place on a WCW music compilation album released around the same time. WCW's creative team fully expected the crowd to boo the Rednecks loudly and cheer for the No Limit Soldiers instead. Instead, the company badly misjudged its own loyal Southern fan base, sitting in the arena every single week, an audience that had grown up on country music and blue-collar values, rather than mainstream pop culture. Audiences embraced the Rednecks warmly, waving handmade supportive signs and singing along with the song night after night, accidentally turning a planned villain act into one of the most genuinely popular things happening anywhere on WCW television that entire summer. Number 3 is Hulk Hogan, the man widely believed by insiders to have ended that unexpected success before it could grow into anything larger. Curt Hennig later described how a blonde wrestler who often said the word brother constantly was the one who quietly stopped the group's rising momentum, a fairly clear reference to Hogan himself. According to that account, Hogan approached Hennig backstage and told him, "I can't follow that, brother," a comment strongly suggesting the Rednecks were now getting stronger crowd reactions than some of the company's most expensive main event stars on the same card. Shortly after that conversation, the entire stable vanished from television and was quietly dissolved after only 4 short months together. This is the closest the real research ever comes to one single powerful figure, directly limiting Windham's success at any point in his career. Even here, it was not 10 wrestlers voting together to remove him. It was essentially one established veteran protecting his own spot at the very top of the card from a rising act underneath him. Even when Windham finally found an act that connected naturally with real fans, that same organic success quickly became a perceived threat to someone standing above him, and it was shut down almost as fast as it had originally begun, before it ever had the chance to reach its full potential on national television. Number 2 is Scott Hall, and this is exactly where the story turns warm and generous instead of bitter and political, offering real proof that Windham was never the isolated, resentful figure some online videos try to paint him as. In late 1984, Hall was working as a bartender at the Dollhouse in Orlando while lifting weights and trying to break into professional wrestling through Hiro Matsuda's demanding training school. Windham happened to meet him by chance in a local grocery store, noticed his impressive size, and simply asked him about his career goals and ambitions. Instead of shutting him out or ignoring him like an outsider, Windham and Mike Rotunda brought Hall straight into a training ring themselves, taking real bumps for him and patiently teaching him timing and ring positioning from complete scratch. That small early act of generosity eventually grew into a genuine, lifelong friendship between all 3 men. Years later, once Hall had become a major backstage power player in WCW as part of the NWO, he actively used his own considerable influence to help get Windham placed on the company's corporate payroll during a difficult stretch. That kind of loyalty simply does not happen naturally between a supposedly hated veteran and a business built on constant jealousy and self-interest. Windham showed real, unforced kindness to a younger, unproven performer, yet his own long-term career still ended up depending on stronger political figures being willing to return that favor many years later. A small reminder that even generosity in wrestling often comes back around in unexpected ways. Number 1 is Ric Flair, the name most closely tied to Windham's greatest nights in the ring, and the clearest possible proof of everything the fake banishment story tries so hard to erase from memory. Windham debuted at only 19 years old and almost immediately won the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Rookie of the Year award for that debut year, a rare honor for someone so young and so new to the business. His unforgettable 41-minute classic against Flair at Battle of the Belts 2 later earned Match of the Year honors from the very same respected publication, a match still remembered fondly by longtime fans decades later. In 1987 alone, Windham and Flair produced two completely separate matches that both received the extremely rare 5-star rating from wrestling's toughest and most demanding critics. By 1993, Windham was ranked an impressive number 11 in the entire PWI 500, a genuine and widely respected measure of standing across the whole industry, placing him firmly above countless performers with far more television exposure at the time. In 2012, he entered the WWE Hall of Fame as a proud member of the legendary Four Horsemen stable, standing alongside Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and Tully Blanchard as one of the most respected factions the business has ever produced. In 2024, he was inducted for a second separate time, this time honoring the U.S. Express and that unforgettable, historic night at the very first WrestleMania, cementing his place as a two-time Hall of Famer whose peers never stopped respecting his work. So there is the real countdown, 10 names and moments, and not one single entry on that list is part of a united conspiracy to ban Barry Windham from wrestling. Some were close friends, some were fierce rivals inside carefully planned storylines, written months in advance. Some were simply company executives making cold, calculated business decisions from behind a desk, far away from the arena itself. None of them ever worked together as a group against him at any point in his long and eventful career. The true tragedy hiding underneath the clickbait title is simpler and sadder than any fake plot could ever be, and it says far more about the wrestling business itself than it ever does about Barry Windham as a person. A wrestler with this much rare natural ability spent much of his long career losing hard-earned momentum to exhausting travel schedules, sudden family emergencies, weak creative ideas from the top, shifting backstage power structures, and established stars quietly protecting their own positions above him. Barry Windham's career may always feel a little bit smaller than his enormous talent truly deserved. But the classic matches, the hard-earned championships, the genuine friendships, and two well-earned Hall of Fame inductions all prove together that no fake list of 10 invented enemies can ever erase what he truly accomplished inside that ring, night after night, across a career that always deserved more credit than it ever received.